Hello everyone, it's Rasa von Werder from the University of Mother God Church. And without planning it or me really anticipating it, I basically got started in talking about matriarchy versus patriarchy. Now, I've touched upon it before, but I've not really jumped into it whole hog. I've talked a lot about my biography, and there were a couple things. Maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about my early life, because I've been through so much shit in life. It's like, when they do my life story, there's no way that they could do my life properly in a movie. They could make just a movie, but it will be by no means covering my life properly. No means, by no means. It needs to be like Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, 8, 9, 10, or it needs to be like Peyton Place. Peyton Place started with one little book. I read it when I was a kid. I was like 17 or 18 or something when it came out, and I read it. It's just a little book. And they ended up making a whole, one movie and then a whole TV series. I remember I was on the set at Paramount of where they filmed it, and they had a whole street of sets that looked like, it was a town. So it became a billion, multi-billion dollar industry, Peyton Place. So that's how my life should be, because there's so much to it. There's the bodybuilding stories. There's the stripping for God stories. When I went on the road, I was the stripper for God for 14 years. I was a dancer for 21 years. I was the foundress of female bodybuilding. I was in that a few years. Then there's my early life. Then I was a dominatrix for 10 years. Then I was a social worker for 2 years, a community organizer, social worker for the Italian American Civil Rights League. Then I bought this house and property, and I own a farm and an island, and I became a preacher. I had my own church in the city here, in this little city. I preached on the street. I had a storefront church that got on 5 times in 3 months. I got on 5 times on the national news, and I published and wrote 20 books, and then I became a photographer, and I photographed like many models, female and male, and I photographed like 30 male models, and I had them staying in my apartment or in my house, and all the adventures I had with them, and just adventures with the local people. My life just goes on and on and on. It's like there's another series that I love called The Duchess of Duke Street. You probably never heard of it because they don't promote it a lot, but that was one of my favorite series I've ever seen. So my life needs to be like that. It needs to be a TV series, a movie and a TV series, and a Broadway show. And if I share it with you, it's going to take many hundreds of videos to just go over my memories, and with the papers that I have, like with the contracts of all the cities and towns. I was a dancer for 21 years. 21 years, from the age of 19, what was it? On and off. It was more than 21 years. What am I saying? But I took breaks. But okay, so I became a female supremacist, female matriarchist, female empowerment worker, activist. I don't even know where to begin, but I thought maybe I'll read, since I just given you the new religion, just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg of the new religion that I'm going to write a catechism for, and I just read William Bond's article about why men are evil. So I'm jumping in, I guess, today maybe I won't talk about my, I had a couple things I was going to, maybe I will, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just don't know. Maybe I will talk about a little bit about some incidents in my life story when I was in my early 20s. Maybe I'll get to that. But to talk about matriarchy, one of the important things that I wrote was a book, Old Woman, Young Man, Why They Belong Together. Now, it's a political thing. Old Woman, Young Man is a political thing. It is not just being a cougar. Being a cougar, they got it all wrong. They got it all wrong about what a cougar is and why a cougar is. It's not just old women getting their jollies. It's not about jollies. It's about authority. See, the men wanted to take away the authority of women over the youth. And they did take away the authority of women over the youth. Their whole premise of patriarchy is jealousy and envy. They coveted women's power. They coveted women's authority, influence over children, over young people. And so they stole the young men. They stole the young men from the women. So that's why you have, in England and other so-called civilized countries, boarding schools for boys from the age of 8 years old, 8 to 12, 8 to 15. And in the boarding schools, they're brutalized. They are opportunities for grown men to assault them sexually. And they do. They do. If you look on YouTube, take a look at boarding schools and all the sex abuse in boarding schools by the teachers. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And the same thing happened in the Roman days and the Greek days. They took boys from their mothers from the age of 7, 8, 12 up until young adults. And when it came time for the young men to get married, a lot of them could not get an erection for a woman because they had sex only with their male mentors their whole life. And suddenly there's a woman in front of them, and they can't get an erection because they've been turned homosexual by practice. They're not born homosexual, but they're turned into homosexual by practice. And so the woman had to put on men's clothing in order for them to get an erection, the wife. The same thing happens, I believe, I don't have any proof of that, but I believe the same thing happens in the Himalayas and places where they conscript all the young men to be in the monasteries, supposedly to learn about God and yoga and Buddhism for 2 years. So all young men are taken in there for 2 years. Well, that's for sex, for sodomy. I'm not saying every single one, every single monk, but probably most of the monks are, most men who become monks and priests are homos. Now, in the old days, they used to have wives on the sly, which was good. Like our Lithuanian priests in the old country, when I was a child, when I made my catechism, the old priest had a wife. And when I went to my Annunciation Church in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, the old priest had a wife. The same exact situation, same exact. But the young priest, he was gay, he had no wife. So he was probably looking at the young altar boys. I don't know what he did. I'm not accusing him. I don't know anything about it. But I'm saying that the old women taking over the young men is an act of politics, an act of the war of the genders. We're taking back the young men. It's not just getting our jollies. We're taking back authority. The old woman, young man is taking back authority. They stole the young men from us. They're stealing them. And then in China also, I know I dated a young man. He's in college here at Binghamton U. And he told me that his parents sent him to China to go to martial arts school, karate martial arts, for 2 years. He didn't tell me what went on, but I know what went on. I know the purpose of it. Whenever they conscript and take in young men for teaching, the teachers, not all of them, but some of them, maybe a lot of them, they want and do some sort of sex. So I'm going to get into this book, Old Woman, Young Man, Why They Belong Together. I have a part 1 and a part 2, and I will read from some of it. To be continued.